Hello, everyone. Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we want to take on the single most important issue, I think, on planet Earth right now, and that is how do we think like an ET? How do we establish intelligible communication with these beings that we are now being given incontrovertible evidence about? That we are not alone, they're here, they're talking with us, they're making themselves manifest to us. And so we need to upgrade our linguistic capabilities to learn the mother tongue, to learn how to communicate intelligibly with these beings. I've mentioned before the excitement that I feel, that Humanity Rising, Ubiquity University feels about this moment, because we're right in the beginnings of, I think, the next big phase of disclosure, which started many, many years ago, quickened in 2017 with the New York Times article, as we've discussed, and then David Grush, congressional testimony in July of 2023, and then various other statements, all saying the same thing, that there's now, as Carl Nell puts it, zero doubt that non-human intelligences are here. And then Ross Coulthart, the Australian journalist, interviewed and broadcast with Jake Barber, who has personally handled these alien craft, personally communicated with alien beings, has a company, Skywatcher, which is working with the US government and various agencies to retrieve these crafts, and is talking about psionics, of how humans now can begin to engage in mental telepathic communication with extraterrestrials, which requires an upgrade. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I want to just note that Ubiquity University is in the middle of this revolution. Our extraterrestrial studies program, which you can find on our website at ubiquityuniversity.org, in partnership with Transdimensional Mapping, which is the creation of Bertie Jaworski, one of the great remote viewers, remote perceivers in the world. We're rolling out a series of courses and summits and opportunities, in-person learning journeys to hotspots with Bertie Jaworski, with Chris Bledsoe, that are all of which are coming up. And in fact, our next course, which is on the science of consciousness of remote viewing, is starting this Thursday with several remote viewers, one from the Monroe Institute, which is one of our strategic academic partners, the Monroe Institute. So we are at the heart of this impulse, which is now beginning to surface worldwide, that since they're here, we need to learn how to talk with them and how to be with them and how to collaborate with them in an open-hearted way, so that together, humans and extraterrestrials, in the widest scope of what that means, can begin to fashion the next phase for human growth and development as humanity now enters its cosmic moment. If we're not alone, since we're not alone, establishing bonds of friendship and empathetic collaboration with these beings is the only way to secure the human future. But that requires, as we're going to discuss right now, moving from particle thinking to wave thinking. So we have two people with us today, Alan Steinfeld and Hope Fitzgerald, who are going to provide insights as to what they perceive all this means. So we're going to start with Alan. And Alan has been at this researching and teaching everything from ancient history and philosophy to quantum mechanics to UFOs for many, many years. He convened the TV series New Realities, many of you know, and then his recent book is Making Contact. And so, Alan, I want to welcome you. Alan's going to do a PowerPoint presentation, then he's going to tee Hope up, and then we'll have a dialogue for the balance of the time, and then Alan and Hope will join the after chat. So, Alan, thank you and welcome.
Well, it is an honor to be here. We need people like you, Jim, who are so dedicated to this transformation and this awakening, because we need to be different people if we're really going to understand this phenomenon. We cannot understand it from an old paradigm, and that's been our problem. And that's what I'll show here a little bit. We need to expand the parameters by which we think. And I'm so happy that Hope is here to join me, and I'll go into the PowerPoint and just kind of explain my level, or how I feel we need to shift our level of consciousness. So here we are, from particle to wave. And this abstract picture is sort of symbolic of the ways we have to start to think about the nature of reality. It's no longer needs to be concretized. It needs to be expanded and become more abstracted, less a hold on our definitive nature, and more into a multiplicity of possibilities. And that means how we think abstractly. Okay, me and Hope have come together for this retreat, and this is where the whole kind of discussion here came about. She does this infinity wave, and I wrote this book, Making Contact. So putting it together, I think we get the male, female, left and right brain, the wave and the particle. This is my book, Making Contact. We cannot separate the earth from the greater cosmic environment. We need a new story. I also teach remote viewing, and we have to understand the UFO phenomena requires an interdisciplinary approach to psychology, sociology, physics, and areas of conscious study and non-ordinary realities. This is Hope's work in her infinity wave and what she discovered, and she'll be talking about that later in this presentation. But she's developed an awareness of movement and being that I would say doesn't collapse the wave function, but keeps the wave alive. Hope, you have anything you would like to say about that while your picture's there? Or we'll come back to that. Is that it, Hope? Okay.
Alan, just to let you know, your PowerPoint isn't showing.
It's not. I'm glad someone told me that.
I was trying to reach you.
Anyway. I'm sorry. I'm glad someone I have to start over. Okay. Thank you for telling me that.
There you go.
Okay. There it is. All right. Actually, okay. Okay. Let me just go to, okay. Thanks, Hope.
Let's start over.
I'm glad you're there to tell me that my PowerPoint isn't showing. All right, here we go. Let me just go to shared, and then, okay, here, play start. Okay, sorry for that. Maybe we can edit that. Here's this abstract notion of going from a kind of singularity of thinking to a multiplicity of thinking. Here's a little, here's a sign for this retreat we're doing together called Making Contact, where I talk about the kind of particle aspect, and Hope talks about the wave. This is a book I've written called Making Contact, and I also teach remote viewing. This is the understanding that UFO phenomena requires an interdisciplinary approach to many different levels of reality. This is you, Hope. Talk about a little bit about the infinity wave there.
Oh, right now? Oh.
Yeah, just a little bit, and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, for those who don't know, that figure eight of flowing water that you see on the slide is a representation of this very highly distilled love and compassion in motion. And it came to me in a series of visions 10, 12 years ago now. I wrote the book about this, the delivery of this system to me, and I've been using it ever since. And it is here to help us through the times that we're in, through the bumpiness, the chaotic times that we're in. It's reminding us to stay in a flow state. And so that is the wave state. And so I'll stop for now.
Thank you. That's exactly where we need to go in this discussion, into this wave state. I just want to say, thanks, Hope. The problems of the world cannot be solved by skeptics or cynics whose horizons are limited by the obvious realities. We need men and women who dream of things that never were. That is the only way we're really going to approach this cooperative communication that we're being presented with. If we can go beyond our accepted thought. And this is because I'm obsessed with the subject, I needed to make a pilgrimage to the site where the Betty and Barney Hill incident took place there in New Hampshire. There's actually a plaque on the side of the road put up by the state of New Hampshire. And why this is important, because this was another level. I mean, people were seeing UFOs for a long time, but it was with the Betty and Barney Hill case that we realized there was this human ET interaction. And of course, what Ubiquity University is doing with the psionic work, it's the next level. So Edgar Mitchell said, the experiencer of contact with non-human intelligence is the key that will open the understanding of what consciousness is. So really it is about shifting how we think of our consciousness, of what consciousness is, and who we are as consciousness. Any experience that does not conform to our category's perception of reality will not be real for us. So in order to go beyond that, we have to break out of our limited perceptions of reality and start to live in a reality that is part of a higher perception, part of a perception that's coming into form. We have to trust more our ability to apprehend as opposed to comprehend. I'll get into that a little bit later. And why we're at this point in history is many, many reasons. Proliferation of remote viewing courses that Ubiquity University will present. The psionic assets of Jacob Barber, like I said to Jim earlier, was a game changer. And the telepathy tapes. These three core elements that are being infused into our culture, showing us really the scope of consciousness that's been previously beyond our imagination. And these are the key elements, I think, that are part of a revolution in consciousness, in our understanding of consciousness, our use of consciousness, and they need to be highlighted if we're going to be a new species that will use our brains differently, use our ability to perceive the reality around us and through us. And I can't recommend highly any of these three elements here, because that is the game changers here. Okay, now it starts with quantum physics, and it goes with Max Planck, who regarded consciousness as fundamental, regard matter as derivative from consciousness. You can't get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing and postulating is consciousness. And so, could other civilizations have a mastery of the technologies of mind and possess knowledge or abilities that beyond our scope to conceive? If so, what's their relationship to us? Most importantly, how could we make steps towards the mastery of consciousness? And I'll come on a little later that our limited view of consciousness is what's in the way of understanding the vastness of our human potential. I think Jacques Vallée is very important in this study. He speculates the understanding of UFOs might require a radical new understanding of physics, incorporating higher dimensional theories to explain the phenomena. Okay, making contact is going from particle to wave, matter to energy, Newtonian to quantum reality, thinking to feeling. I know I'm going through this a little fast, and we'll discuss it after. Left brain to right brain to whole brain. That's where we're going, okay? Another important thinker on the topic is Whitley Strieber. His book, Communion, was, I think, after the Benny and Barney Hill case, I think this picture of the ET with the eyes, I mean, it's a little unrealistic in a sense, but it was a wake-up call for people having contact and seeing faces like this. And Whitley got 200,000 letters, Whitley and his wife Ann, after he wrote this book, Communion. And he said in a further addition to this book called Breakthrough that we must never forget contact was not initiated by the visitors, but by our ability to see what could not be seen or sensed of the unknown. It was initiated by the growing richness of the human mind. That's why our evolution is so important. Another foundational thinker in the field was J. Allen Hynek. And as a scientist, he said, I must be mindful of the past. All too often it happens that matters of great value to science were overlooked because new phenomena did not fit into accepted scientific theories. That's where the old guard, that's where science is now stuck. They're trying to fit the phenomena into what they know, and we need to go beyond what we know into what we don't know. Now, this is where physics comes in. Lue Elizondo had talked about 6 observables: anti-gravity lift, sudden instantaneous acceleration, hypervelocity without signature. It means no heat signatures, no way of seeing its interaction with our environment, low observability, cloaking, transmedium travel, and biological effects. That's for a whole other discussion. But that was one of the 6 observables that the Pentagon and ATIP made about the phenomena. So all these means that they're not using Newtonian science to move these craft. And this is Newtonian science in which we run the world. And this is based on 3 basic laws of thermodynamics. First law, stationary bodies remain stationary until external force is applied. Second law is force equals mass time acceleration. But it's the third law that really runs our world. Every action has equal and opposite reaction. We are running our world on physics that are 400 years old, based on Newtonian's Principia. And that's where we're stuck. We are attached, we're addicted to a kind of oil economy, and it's been perpetuated, this understanding that that's all physics can be. And this is where a lot of mainstream science is stuck. They say, well, UFOs can't get from here to there because it's impossible to travel that speed. Of course, if you're a Newtonian thinker, it is impossible. But if you go beyond that, if you go into other ways of thinking about physics, then you realize the obsoleteness, possibly, of the Newtonian principles. And part of Newtonian principles applies to our human identity. That's why I love this joke. This guy is yelling at the bartender, hey, Bal, you have no idea who I think I am. You see, the basis of Newtonian is to name something, to measure it. Even yourself, put yourself in a limitation. We have to break out of the boxes of how we think about the world and how we think of ourselves, right? Since it seems a phenomenon is not using any form of physics, I guess this is what we call quantum. This is where we get into quantum physics, right? So this is the Tic Tac, a little picture of the Tic Tac. And the Tic Tac did not have any known means of propulsion. It wasn't being propelled by Newtonian physics. That's really what I'm trying to say here. There's another physics that obviously was behind all this, and quantum physics is one way of qualifying it, but I think we need to even go deeper than quantum physics. That's just a label. So now, another reason I think quantum physics is the key here is because of this ATIP program, these slides from ATIP. these were leaked out of Chris Mellon's website a few years ago, and some of the ATIP was I don't have to go into what ATIP was, but they understood the nature of this phenomenon or looked at what it was displaying. I think a key element here in these ATIP slides was this human interface, human effects, and they really couldn't understand what was going on from an old way of looking at it, and they realized there was more to it. And I'll just get to the bottom line here. What was considered phenomena is now quantum physics. So this was a key to the fact that the phenomena needs to be understood outside the Newtonian paradigm. And the ATIP program and the DoD started to get this. They started to get this, and we still don't understand the active participation of quantum physics in this phenomenon, but at least we're getting closer to that page. So what are the qualities of quantum physics? Entanglement, superposition, and the key that I think here about particularly how to think like an ET is not collapsing the wave function. The observer affects reality, meaning that when we see the results of an action, we collapse the wave function into creating an appearance of a particle. But if we don't collapse the wave function, then maybe we could live in a world that is more fluid, more of a waveform. Here's a little, just a little cartoon from What the Bleep, Dr. Quantum, talking about why the understanding of collapsing the waveform concretizes our field. And I'll explain more about that after this. This is Dr. Quantum talking about the double slit experiment, where they wanted to see if the electron or photons were a wave or a particle. So this was an early experiment in the 1800s. And they're kind of illustrating this here, right here. Okay, go.
When we throw things, that is matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. If we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange never-world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
I agree. Simply by observing, the we collapse the wave function. I don't think the particle decides. I think our observation of reality concretizes the world, right? So when we're looking and measuring and kind of putting things with labels, and we're forming our world into a concretized form. Is it possible? And I think this is what the ETs probably do. They are not collapsing the wave function. They're not concretizing their world. They're not limiting what they're sensing. They're keeping their consciousness open to the wave function. They are able to create superposition, entanglement, and a fluidity of being, because they're not concretizing the world into what I call comprehension. They're leaving it open into a more apprehension. So that's the difference I make a lot, the difference between apprehension and quantum and comprehension. So here's just a little difference between two ways of looking at the world. We want to keep the abstract present. We don't want to put our perceptions of reality into a box. By being more fluid, and hope will show that fluidity of being, then we are in the flow of creation without defining it in the old ways. We need to think abstractly. We need to think in feelings. We need to think in shape, color, music. This is some of how remote viewing works. If you don't name the phenomena with the left brain, your right brain is much more able to perceive the targets. That's something I teach in my remote viewing class. So keep the understanding of reality in a kind of moving state, a wave state, basically. So it's apprehension versus comprehension. It is Western science likes to measure things, put it into boxes. That's what collapses the wave function into the world we see, into the concretized world we see, is by naming it, by measuring it, by actually thinking it is a certain thing. John Mack said, we're dealing with a phenomenon which violates our sense of reality and operates in the gray area between the physical, objective world and the interior subjective world. The phenomena will not yield its secrets until we discover other ways of knowing. Other ways of knowing is this abstract knowledge of apprehension versus comprehension. This is so where you need to be more right brain. The difference between the left and right brain is the left brain is the ego defining world, and the right brain is looking at patterns of perception. So we could look at the logic of the left brain, or we can step back and look at how the world is full of patterns of perception. That's another angle to, I think, moving into a kind of ET consciousness. And it's the right hemisphere really is associated with metaphor, imagination, the capacity to see things in the context, while the left brain is more analytical and detailed. I recommend this book by Ian McGilchrist, The Master and the Emissary. The master is the right brain awareness. The emissary is the overdevelopment of the left brain that we've done in the West to try to try to limit our view of reality. So it comes back to a physics of consciousness. How much about the nature of reality does a civilization know? When we start to think more like these ETs, we'll look at their understanding from a physics of consciousness. How many parallel paths does a civilization have? Timelines. I know I'm going a little abstract and a little fast here, but I want to just cover it all. How much can consciousness extend beyond the physical container? What does reality look like if it could look like this here? Our understanding of reality is limited by the human senses and true nature The universe involves planes of existence and dimensions that go beyond ordinary perception. Okay. In our old ways of looking at universal civilization, we want to know who they are, what their technologies, how can you weaponize, and maybe help people. In this more abstracted way, we want to get into programmable machines, programmable matter, programmable biology, and programmable consciousness. I know that's a huge step from where I was, but these are some of the aspects of an advanced civilization, okay? Now, this is another way we can move into more of an abstracted perception. The problem is by the time we're 5 years old, we're taught ABC 1, 2, 3. And when we, are born, we have this vast world of awareness and it's limited. So our worlds become very much concretized into a semantic reality based on limited perceptions, and we lose our creative means of not understanding the world, but being part of this great mystery. We separate from the mystery. So this is the Newtonian way of looking at things: separation, measurement, position. This is the quantum way: entanglement, uncertainty. That's key: uncertainty and superposition, right? And so just a bit of more quantum thing. I would leave it all things that I would leave all the things I can think and choose all the things I could not think. This is not about thinking in the old way if we're really going to make contact with these beings. It's what the poet John Keats called negative capability, when a person is able to be in uncertainty, in mystery and doubt, without reaching after fact and reason. Right now, as we make this transition from Newtonian thinking to quantum thinking, we have to let go of the definities of our world and move into this other willingness to suspend belief and look at things in a novel way. Here's another way of saying it that Heraclitus talked about, the Greek philosopher. See the paradox, the ability to entertain two contradictory ideas at the same time. This is where we have to go as individual human beings. The test of a first-rate intelligence, the ability to hold two opposed ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. One should, for example, see the things that are hopeless and yet to be determined and make them otherwise. This philosophy fitted into, anyway, this is about F. Scott Fitzgerald. But really what I'm trying to say here, the ability to hold two opposing ideas at the same time will not collapse the wave function. It'll keep it fluid. That's the understanding. We don't want to comprehend the world. We want to apprehend the world. We don't want to make it definitive. We want to live in this abstract notion of what's possible. One more thing. Everyone thinks of consciousness as one thing. It's like these old telephones that were attached to a wire on the wall. That's what we think consciousness is. We think consciousness is one thing, this kind of awareness. And what I'm saying is it's not one thing. It's many, many things. Consciousness, as we see in remote viewing, is the ability to send and receive thoughts. We can also send healing. We can also use our consciousness to move into other people's minds, into other people's reality. So it's not this one wired thing. It's like saying a telephone could only do one thing back then. I'm saying a telephone could do many things. And so that's where what we can do with our mind is send thoughts, and the ETs can actually even manipulate minds. They enter our dreams, and we can expand this notion of consciousness now as we move into these new realities to go beyond the limitations of the old world and start to apprehend new realities. Okay. Are we the drop in the ocean, or are we the power of the ocean in the drop? This is getting into the wave. So as we start to move into this wave-like function. I went through that a little fast, I know, Hope. We get out of this concretized world that we think is our reality, and we start to move into this fluid nature where things are not one thing. There are a multiplicity of things. And that is the beginning way to start to reach our visitors that are here. That's how they move through time and space. Because if you concretize it into a Newtonian way of moving, then you'll never get from A to B. You'll always be stuck in a kind of linear progression. So we need this wave function to be integrated where the fluidity of reality starts to move out of this, this dense world into a more abstract way of being. And this is where Hope is the master of the infinity wave, where she will introduce the fluidity of consciousness and how we can move in that sort of motion away from collapsing the wave function and keeping it as a wave. Okay, Hope, I think I've said enough.
Thank you, Alan.
All right.
Well, it's, I want to just go back because when I had this series of visions, I was walking across my living room, and all of a sudden there in front of me was a very large, tall wave, and it was moving toward me. And there was a byline that went with it. I was stunned. I stopped in my tracks. I'm not used to seeing such things, especially in my living room. And the byline was, this wave represents a push of evolution that is coming to the planet. And if you learn to surf it or swim with it, things will go much better for you than if you resist. As we all know, if we go to the beach and stand stock still, the waves will, push us right down on the sand in no time. But if we dive through it and body surf with it, we'll be fine. So that was the very first message and the very first vision. And this was in late 2010. And in subsequent conversations through my dowsing to try to figure out more about this wave, and I'll get back to it in a second, I was told that this incoming energy, this big push of evolution that is characterized in the vision as a wave, but it actually is a series of waves that have been emanating from galactic center, that this push of evolution was going to be wrapping around the planet and anchoring in at the end of 2011. So I want to note that, because of the next thing that happened. The wave turned on its side. It now was a curling big letter C, like a surfer would surf. And that talked about getting my information from the earth and the wisdom keepers of the earth, and leaving all this book knowledge that I'd accumulated over many, many years on the shore, go to the wisdom of the earth. And then the third vision was that letter C came down and turned into that standing figure 8 of flowing water that Alan showed earlier in the presentation. There was no byline with that. So I had to investigate through my dowsing and my intuition to come to some understanding about this, because I was also told that I was needing to teach this and spread this around the world. Well, that's about the last thing in the world I wanted to do. But this figure 8 made of flowing water, I was told we could call the infinity wave, and it is a metaphor. It is representation of a state of being. This is before I knew Alan, and I wish I'd known him right then, because I would have called him up and said, what do you think? But this state of being is a flow state, is a way of being in a yes and, entertaining two thoughts at one time and not feeling split. As Alan was talking about, we need to be able to hold multiple realities, not just two, but multiple realities at the same time. And within this figure 8 is this very, very high, I'll say what they told me, 10th dimensional level of love and compassion. Now, we don't have to get into the weeds about dimensions, but we can just say, okay, it's highly, highly purified and refined. It's not even emotional. It's beyond that. But the idea is when we invite this figure eight of flowing water into our bodies, into our meditations, into our everyday, driving in the car, checking out at the grocery store, whatever we're doing, it puts us into a different level of being. It takes us out of 3D, and we don't have to say where we end up, but it bounces us up and out. And as a result, it opens up the parameters, opens up the capabilities to perceive things differently. First of all, perceive things maybe with more understanding, certainly less judgment. When we're in that beautiful state of flow, it's hard to be judgmental. It's hard to be othering. You can't really do it. And so this is the push of spiritual evolution that I have been understanding ever since then, is where our humanity is going. Now, I want to say that you showed the Schreiber book Communion, and that I read many, many years ago. And so that was my first book about extraterrestrials. I was very, very curious, and I've stayed curious ever since. And I've followed Danny Sheehan, and I followed various people. I've read lots of books and been fascinated with the subject. And I have been an observer. And now come back on, Alan and Jim, because I want us to talk about exactly what Jim is doing with these courses at Ubiquity. This is a time I realized when I read Chris Bledsoe's book in the fall, I realized it's time to step forward, each one of us, and be a good neighbor. And what do as a good neighbor? You wave. And then Alan and I realized, oh my gosh, we're actually waving, metaphorically and like a good neighbor, to say we're here, and we, from the goodness of our hearts, we want you to understand that we are loving beings. Not everything you see on planet Earth is violent and angry and caught in the 3D struggle of yes or no, the dualistic thinking. Some of us are evolving through that, past that. And so I feel, and this is why Alan and I are doing this retreat that we're doing, I feel now it is individually our responsibility to up level, as you said, Jim, up level our frequencies, because we have a lot further to go. They come down to us, but we're the ones who need to get in the sandbox and start, showing that we're willing to play. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. One more thing, not collapsing the wave function makes us all waves, makes the world a wave, makes the fluidity of reality available to consciousness on another level. Does this make sense, Jim?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And I think that the differentiation that you're making, Alan, between apprehension and comprehension is the key.
Yes. Thank you.
Because we're in a world of Newtonian, we're like in a particle where everything's contained. We comprehend the whole. We have Wikipedia if we want to know what it looks like, and we're in a world of time, space, and causality, and the ETs aren't bounded by that, so they can apprehend. Because if you're in borders, you can only comprehend, but if you move into the wave function, you can apprehend, and that's intuition and mental telepathy and remote perception and all the other things that naturally arise if you just get rid of the boundaries that have been imposed upon you by our culture.
Right. And we're living more abstractly. We're living in the Tao,
Yeah.
which is the fluidity of the wave. And sometimes the abstraction says more than the concretization. And the great example I like to use is the song by George Harrison, Something in the Way She Moves, something. If you say something, that's abstract, but it's like if you would have said, oh, her eyes or this or that, but this is something gives us a fuller sense of a deeper reality, this apprehension.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Well,
yeah.
that's what made the Beatles, right?
Exactly. It took us to this other place. And what makes abstract art a little more sophisticated, or jazz, for instance, more evolved. It's this movement. It's not a fixed state. And I think if we can start to live in that world and in the wave, as Hope is saying, where everything is that, then we're going to meet these beings on an even playing field.
That's what we are. I mean, look, we know that there have been groups going out to the deserts and going to do these kinds of things for years. We are going to be using this wave, infinity wave, to up-level people, because it is moving into a flow state, and it's so easy and it's so available. It's not like you don't have to work hard to get there. And so when we go out into the red rocks of Sedona, and after a few days of practicing this, we believe we're going to be able to, have up-leveled enough to have a communication of some sort, or at least a sighting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just want to say the psionics people, whoever are using that application, are doing something different than ordinary thought. I mean, what do you think, Jim?
Well, I think that's absolutely correct. And I think, Hope, the remark that you just made is really seminal, and I'd like to dwell on it and then talk a little bit more about psionics, because I think this differentiation between comprehension and apprehension, between particle and wave, is crucial. And this is what I'd like to have both you comment on, because depending on which pathway humanity decides to take, that's going to determine whether we experience this ET phenomenon as victim or as partner. And I want to dwell on this, because this presentation, everybody, is really important, how to think like an ET. If we stay in the particle, and I'm just going to use particle and wave just as metaphors here. If we stay in the particle consciousness of the national security state, of being afraid of these beings, of thinking that we have to shoot them out of the sky, which is what the US government is currently doing, that we have to bring them down and reverse engineering so we can make bigger weapons, and we're proliferating our nuclear threat and doing all kinds of radiation through our nuclear power plants. If we stay in that particle consciousness, the ETs have no other option but to treat us accordingly.
Right.
If, on the other hand, we listen to the Hopes and the Allens of the world, and the Bertie Jaworskis and all the other people, Chris Bledsoe, that are telling us, listen, if we just open ourselves up as a wave, our experience of the ETs qualitatively shifts. So the real point is, and this is that we're in a Rorschach test. It's not like they're objectively real as particles, and we have to kind of, ratchet up and, mano. They're coming at us from the point of view of apprehension, and inviting us to explode our categories of comprehension so that we can elevate and refine our consciousness to embrace the benevolence that is motivating all of them in coming here in the first place. Does that ring true to you?
Absolutely. one more piece, though, Jim, is we have to let go of our identity, our limited sense of self.
Yeah.
This is what remote viewing teaches. The left brain says, oh, I know what it is. You have to stop, concretizing your own self and allow your consciousness to pick up the cues.
Yeah.
Right.
Good.
So it expands who we are as human beings. The human potential, like the telepathy tapes show, it's vast, and we've put ourselves in little boxes. And it's not until we start to wave into the world, Hope, right, that we start to break out of the box of limitation.
That's true. And I want to follow up also with what Jim said. And this is exactly my feeling, is that we need to take it on ourselves, each individual. Like, I dream of a day when we go into the backyard at night and we literally say, hey, how you doing?
Hello.
I'll see you tomorrow. And we start to have this interaction that is normal. It's not a big, and I think it's so fascinating that we are seeing ships all over the world, literally every day. Exactly. They're showing up here, they're showing up with different shapes, different whatever, different times of day, but every day I am seeing something that is showing up. And I think it's a way to say, we're here. Can you communicate with us? Can you get normalized to this? And if we have a way to say yes, and we are, I also realized, everybody's talking about ascension and about we're going to 5D. Well, I realized we're going to do it because we're going to be with them. They're going to be giving us the leg up to get on the horse to make that leap. And yes, we have avatars showing up in the telepathy tapes. And of course, they've been around. Avatars have been with us for a long time, but now they are really, really showing up.
And
show us what's possible.
I want to say, when you do the wave and we do this practice, it actually comes from the heart. So this infinity is coming out of our hearts into someone else's heart, and we're including them in our field. And it's sort of what Chris Bledsoe does. I was out with Chris one night looking at these things, and he is just sending out this pure love. And it shows up because he's waving to them, so.
Yeah. He's going to be doing a course with us in April, and he's going to be on the Psionic Summits. I love Chris. He's a man without guile.
Yeah. He's a pure being. When I've hung out with him, it's like, it's being around like a saint. I call him the saint of the UFO world. He's just.
Yeah. Wonderful man.
He is.
Wonderful man.
His intentions are pure, and he is open. When the government came to Chris and said, how come they're talking to you? Well, to me, it was obvious why it was Chris. Because he's in that state. Right?
He's become a wave.
Yes, good point.
He manifests wave consciousness, and you can feel it from him.
Yes.
And that's why the lady shows up and orbs are at his beck and call, because he's resonating with them. And that's our challenge.
Yes.
All of it.
That's our opportunity.
That's our opportunity. And let's turn to that because, and starting with you, Hope, because I remember you being on Humanity Rising before, and you were the one that introduced us to Veda Austin. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether you heard, but we've put Veda Austin together with Bertie Jaworski, because Veda is now talking with the autistic young people in the telepathy tapes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because her hydroglyphs that she's discerning coming from the water, she can provide crude interpretation, but she really doesn't know what the water's saying. So I sent her the telepathy tapes a couple months ago, and she listened to them and went, whoa. And she's now in touch with some of the autists in the telepathy tapes, and they know how to read the hydroglyphs.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
They know how to read
all of those little squigglies in the ice.
The little squigglies. They can tell you exactly, verbs, nouns, adjectives. It's like reading, it's like the Rosetta Stone. These autists trapped in bodies that we find so discomforting and disadvantaged, but the clarity of their consciousness is pure wave function.
Right.
So that's what Veda's going to do for her PhD at Ubiquity is a dissertation on the autists and their interpretive framework for this hydrographic language she's getting from water.
Wow.
Wow.
It's
Fantastic.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And so what I wanted to have you talk to us about is your figure eight, because we all need to be learning simple ways in our everyday lives where we can develop our capacity to move from particle to wave, because we're trapped in a particle reality like Plato's cave, man. And we see these shadows on the walls and we think all there is particles, when
Right.
all around that are these beings waving to us as waves.
It's,
So talk
isn't
to us,
it
how do we
ironic?
become waves?
It's ironic, Jim, that these autistic children are much more of a wave because they're not defining their personality.
Exactly.
Hope,
Exactly.
yes.
And I would urge everybody to listen to the telepathy tapes.
Yeah,
They will
they're
blow
just
your
wonderful.
mind.
Just
They will
wonderful.
blow your mind.
I
But
agree.
Hope, how do we become waves?
Okay, it's so easy. It's so easy. We just really, it's using the imagination. And as we know, the imagination is extremely powerful. So we imagine just what the picture looked like. It's a figure eight of flowing water. Now, inherent in that water is that very high, pure level of love and compassion, as I said. It's inherent in it. So we don't have to conjure up feelings of love and feelings of compassion, because a lot of times when we most need those feelings or those elements, those qualities, is when we're not feeling that, when we're actually a little bundled up or upset or fill in the blank. So knowing that it's already in the geometry is important, obviously. And look, infinity sign has been around forever, so there's nothing new about the infinity or the figure eight. But when you combine that, the power of that geometry with this wavy water, it has an incredible effect. And we have to remember that it is a representation of a force, of something much, much bigger, but it's a way for our minds to use it. So we use our imagination, we take that figure eight, we put it first in our hearts. And what I do is turn it on its side, and I'd be happy to gift everybody, I'll send along a 15-minute meditation called Widening of the Heart. And we just place it in the
You
heart.
put it as a link in the
I
chat?
can. I have
Yeah.
to go quickly find it in a second.
Oh, no, then we'll do it later.
Okay, and what it does is you start to feel, and you can even use your finger to start to trace it, because people sometimes have a hard time imagining it. And it starts to soften not just the emotional heart, but the physical heart. You feel this, you feel this letting go, and the heart starts to soften and become more available. So that's one way to use it. Another way to use it is from the from the crown down across the body, down under the feet and back up. And I call this the infinity cradle. And all of these practices came to me completely word for word from channeling that I didn't know I could do. So they just dropped in like, surprising me more than anyone. But they work. And so you imagine this cradle, and you're held in this beautiful feeling of love and compassion, first of all, for ourselves. So important, because we're most of us, especially those of us who are big givers, which I'm sure everybody who is at this channel is, really good at giving, not always so good at receiving. So the first thing we do is allow this love and compassion to fill up our wells, right? And once that's done, then we can start to share it with others. So you don't have to tell anybody that from your heart, you're running a figure eight out to another person. And you're just letting the water do the work. Again, you don't have to conjure the love and compassion. It's going to be there. And anything you send out is going to come back to you. So it has a way of leveling the playing field. Like I said, sometimes when we need love and compassion the most is when we're not feeling that. So if somebody's upset or you're upset or there's an argument or whatever it is, start running this wave and everybody calms down. The language gets easier, solutions are found because you're no longer bound in 3D. You've had the fertilizer of 10D come down and grow you into something else. And that's basically it. I have practices, I have my book, but anybody can do this. I've just given you the roadmap.
Can you do a little bit now, Hope, so we can practice that for everyone online? Just a little quick little exercise?
Sure. Do we have time, Jim? I don't want to.
Sure. No, do
Okay.
it. Good idea, Alan. Good idea.
All right.
It's
Well, let's do the wave in the heart then.
Mhm.
All right. So everybody, if you want to, just get comfortable and close your eyes. And I would love you to just take a deep breath from the soles of your feet up to your heart center, and then back down to your feet, and just do that a few moments. And you can even go below the feet into the earth. This is just to bring you to the here and now, to the heart center and down into the earth. And then when you're ready from the heart center, exhale up through the crown like a fountain. And inhale back down into your heart center. And every exhale takes you up and out, expanding your field and bringing back down into the heart center the qualities above and around you. And just one more time, one big breath out through the crown and inhaling back down to the heart center. Good. And now that you feel aligned, just imagine in your heart center a little figure 8 of flowing water. And as I said, you can take your finger and trace it on your heart center. And as you imagine this watery flow right in the middle of your heart, move yourself into an observable frame of mind. You're just going to notice this figure 8. Notice if it has a color. It doesn't have to be blue. It could be any color. And notice the rate that the water is flowing. It could be a trickle or rushing like a river. And as you breathe deeply while you notice this figure 8, just notice if it's having any effect on your heart. Just a little tickle in there or a softening or anything like that. Doesn't have to. This infinity wave has a consciousness all its own. It has an intelligence all its own. So by inviting it into your heart center now, you are inviting infinite love and compassion for you, first and foremost. Take a deep breath and see if you can receive that. Now, as you begin to breathe deeper and deeper, allow this figure 8 to be oriented east and west. So one loop is towards your right lung and one is towards your left lung, parallel to the floor. And each inhalation is going to begin to stretch slowly those loops toward your lungs, just like balloons inside of them are slowly inflating with every inhalation, very slowly, because it can feel a little tight. Our hearts have become guarded through the bombardment of life. But in the safety of the infinity wave, this love and compassion allows the heart to surrender itself and let go. And again, just breathing and stretching the balloons of the infinity wave a little more. And this time, just allowing the infinite compassion to flow through this center of you. Compassion for your walk in life, for all the struggles, all the lessons learned, all the ups and downs, everything you've been through. Infinite compassion for you, just for you. And stretching it a little more, inflating those balloons a little more now, just taking in that infinite love for you. Love for the way you love. Love for your courageous choice to be here now. Love for all the ways you operate. Love for the unique soul that you are. Infinite, everlasting love. See if you can really receive that. And now in this expanded, vulnerable place, see if you can sit with that for just another moment. We rarely get this opportunity to be this open, this exposed, yet held so safely. And then when you're ready, just let the balloons deflate to the point where you're comfortable. But you can let that infinity wave stay in your heart center for as long as you wish, perhaps for the rest of your life. As a reminder of the infinite being that you are. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the room.
Thank you.
Looked like you really got something, Jim. What were you feeling?
Well, I was just following directions. I just kept, and as you were leading Hope, I found it, I started small, and then it was naturally expanding and expanding to my whole chest cavity. And then as I kept my breathing, it was expanding beyond. And I realized that that infinity wave is really particles and waves all at the same time, and all is one. It was a beautiful feeling. Thank you very much.
Well, the wave is as small as we want it to be or as large.
Yeah.
Go down into the earth, we can go all the way out in space. That's what we're counting on. We're going to do the so-called work, although it's pretty fun to do it. But we can do that on ourselves to prepare ourselves. But then, when we extend it up, oh my gosh, it's really cool.
I remember the last time you were with us, you gave a little practice of doing it when you run the bath, and just do a 3 or 4 infinity waves from your heart to the water. And I take a bath almost every night before going to bed, and I do that practice, and I must say it has really transformed my relationship to a bath.
Yes, it'll do that. And I'll tell you what, you can do it in a hot tub.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you're at a resort or somewhere, you get into the hot tub by yourself and then you start to wave the water, everybody will come to it. So be very vicious.
Well, that's what we want to do. Send it out from the desert in Sedona out into space with a group that has, entangled its consciousness to gain that power, and all do that and see who shows up.
And by the way, we're doing a retreat immediately after Sedona, we're going to Shasta to do the same thing.
Right.
Fantastic.
So we invite everyone to join us. I'll put the link in there as well.
Yeah, put the link. What are the dates?
Well, the first one is April 30th and ends May 4th. And the second one is May 6th and ends the 10th.
Yes. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun if we get a lot of people creating that emotion out of us.
All at the same time, ba-boom.
I think they're going to have to respond. I mean, that's how CE5s work. That's what Greer, no matter what people might think, he actually started something by dropping into that space, and they show up. They do show up with those deep meditations.
Right, and that's what Jake Barber's able to do at Skywatcher now. The ETs are becoming more and more available as we become more and more fluent in consciousness. They're fluent in consciousness.
Right.
We're fluent in matter. And we have to rework our limitations to be able to become conversant, at least in consciousness. And then we'll start seeing more, experiencing more, and have more of an ability to do what you just led us to do, Hope, and that is to carry a disposition, not of fear and national security competitiveness, but of open-hearted empathy and compassion. That's the key. This is a Rorschach test, folks.
Yes. Yeah. That's what they were waiting for. They weren't coming down to our level. If you're talking to your dog, you don't bark at it. You have to raise yourself up to the level that these beings are at. And
that's a great point. When you're talking to your dog, you don't bark at it.
Right. You speak in the evolved language. And so we're doing that. And everything that you're talking about, ubiquity, is doing that as well, of course,
Yeah. Final question. As you two now look into the future, what do you see evolving kind of, I would say, over the next several years? It's clear that disclosure is gaining momentum. It's clear that the conversation is getting broader and broader. It's also clear that the national security state is fighting back as best it can and is trying to control the narrative. So what do you see happening? And in particular, where do you think the ETs are right now as you perceive them to be? And what are the immediate next steps that humanity needs to take?
Well, you want to go, Hope? Because I think about this question all the time, but go ahead.
Go ahead, Alan. Go ahead.
No, you go, Alan, then Hope will give a close.
Yes, we are evolving what consciousness is. I mean, I didn't do a really good job because I ran through that fast, but it's not one thing. It's like your telephone. It's not attached to the wall anymore. It can do a multiple, that people in the 60s and 70s, if I said, my telephone could take pictures, if my telephone could, find a parking spot and make it, everyone would think we were crazy. So that's what consciousness used to be. It used to be one thing, awareness. And now we're realizing we could send thoughts, we could send healings. Lynn McTaggart's groups of 8, when you send this healing energy, not only is the person feeling the healing, the sender is being healed as well. So the scope of what is capable with this thing we're calling consciousness, and it may have this, or psionics is another word, whatever we want to, will take on more of a multiplicity of functions. We'll really learn who we are. We'll be able to enter people's dream states. It's what the autistic non-speakers are already able to do. Those are our teachers. We could be more like them instead of wanting them to be more like us. Is that's the irony of the telepathy tapes. And so as we become more aware of what consciousness is, which is non-local, we're going to meet these beings on an even playing field, and all the technologies that we've fought so hard to get, it's going to become apparent. It's going to be obvious because there's no separation. We are the ETs in these human bodies because we're infinite. So that's the future. The future is the infinite potential of the human being meeting these others as they are. But it means letting go of this whole identity, attachment, all that stuff. That's my feeling.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh,
Well, that's the desire. I'm with you. I think we're at a tipping point, Jim. And I think that what you're doing and what we're trying to do and what Chris is doing and Chris Bledsoe and many others is trying to tip it into the direction of more interaction, learning from them, becoming galactic citizens, becoming a part of the galactic family, consciously becoming a part of the galactic family. And I don't know, honestly, which way it's going to go, but I know I have to do my part. And that's why we're doing these retreats. I can no longer sit on the sidelines as an Earth citizen and say, oh, I'm just going to watch this show going on in front of me. No, I need to step forward. And I think we all do. And the more of us who do step forward in whatever way they can to communicate, then we have a chance of tipping it into where we want it to go. Because I do feel that we are, all of us on this call, all of us chose to be here at this time to help with this massive transition.
Right.
And I just, I'm staying on the path of we're going to come together and we're going to evolve with them. That's the path I'm on. And I've tried to just put that other group over to the side here, not give them too much of my energy.
Yeah. And stay open to the abstract. It's unimaginable where we're going into, and that's a good thing.
Unimaginable. Yeah.
We have to be available to the unknown. We can't project the known onto the unknown and go into fear. The unimaginable is knocking on our door. We just have to be available to that wave, impact wave, as it comes and takes us.
Now, I just want to follow up on that, Alan, and then I'll be quiet.
Yeah.
But it's being comfortable in the uncertainty that is one of the pieces of this evolution. And that's one thing that we're going to be concentrating on. But I've been teaching that since the wave came in. It's this being comfortable with uncertainty is a big part of staying in wave energy. All right.
no, finish your thought.
No, I'm done. I'm done.
Oh, and I think what's coming up for me in relation to what both of your remarks is the following, that, the paucity of language in describing this phenomenon is becoming apparent to all of us. And if you think, for example, that the Eskimos have, I don't know, 30 or 40 words for snow, the Tibetan Buddhists, I think, have 50 or 60, maybe 70 words for the different dimensions of consciousness. And yet for the last 80 years, we've had one word
Exactly.
for this whole phenomenon. They were just UFOs. And then some people started to talk about ETs. And then it's UAP and NHI. And, then we only have one word for consciousness.
Right.
And now psionics is emerging as a word. And people are, oh my God.
Yes, exactly.
And as we expand our awareness and our consciousness refines itself, our language will follow, because there's something about human beings is we need to put things in language. And so one of the things that's exciting to me is how words are beginning to shape shift as we open ourselves to these different dimensions of reality. And I bet you in, say, 10 years, we'll have as many words for consciousness as the Tibetan Buddhists.
I hope
Well,
so.
I think we'll have
You
as
know,
many.
it'll all be worked out, and we'll have all these different ETs. Well, the reptilians are this, and the da 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 da, and the da 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 da, and the da 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 da, and we'll think, geez, it's like we're in one big megalopolis with the cosmos. And
I
you can
think
go like we go to ethnic restaurants, you go to ethnic neighborhoods,
I think if we look
all
at
through
consciousness,
consciousness.
if we look at consciousness as an app, as an application, then we can. Psionics is one of those apps of consciousness. Healing, remote healing is another app. So let's change
Exactly.
this orientation to what we're calling consciousness, which
Exactly.
and use it as an application. Let's
Love
put on a
that.
lot more apps to consciousness
Yeah.
because it's
I
so
love
many.
that, Alan. I think we got to do something with that. That's good. That's
The
good.
Yeah.
It's the
So
application.
this has been remarkable, and I'm going to ask you to give us a final blessing in a moment, Hope. But I just want to summarize the importance of this session, everyone. We ain't in Kansas anymore. And we have to understand the fundamental truth that our perception and our intention shapes what we see and feel and know. And so the basic message of Hope and Alan here is that as we refine our capacity to perceive, we will further understand the complexity of the unimaginable mystery in which that we are entering.
Yes.
And it's as simple as figure eights. It's as simple as coherent breathing. It's as simple as going out on learning journeys with Alan and Hope, which I hope everyone makes available to themselves. We just need to start focusing our intention on this domain, and our intention will lead us along the right path for us. And that's what's going to enable us to begin to think and feel like an ET.
Exactly.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So we'll retire to the after chat in a moment. And don't forget about our course coming up this Thursday. I put the link in the chat box a couple of times. You can go to ubiquityuniversity.org to get the link to the course. And we have a psionic summit coming up this Sunday. The link is also in the after chat. And then we'll continue with Humanity Rising tomorrow. But Hope, give us a final benediction.
Well, I'm just going to send a giant infinity wave out to every single person who is listening. I'm going to, from my heart to all of you, wash you with this wave of love and compassion for your beauty and your willingness to stretch and reach for something that you might not fully understand, but you're eager as a celestial traveler to discover. So love, 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 and compassion to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, dear ones. You can join Hope and Alan in the after chat. And then we see you all again tomorrow for our next session on Humanity Rising. Thanks, everyone.